I've been studying the case for some time. The branch of cryptozoology has always caught my attention. Pygmies have been talking for years about a large sauropod, perhaps even an apatosaurus in the dense forest of Burma. Also in the jungles of InGen there is supposedly an animal the size of a rhinoceros, which could be a remnant of the ceratopsians, or even the Loch Ness monster in Scotland is a probable plesiosaurus. But these cases have always been involved in a cloud of superstitions and very little has been documented. But what I am currently investigating is different. It started about 5 years ago. Some animals are frequently discovered in the mountains of Costa Rica, suggesting that there is some place where prehistoric beings still live. I'm always getting calls about persistent rumors in aberrant ways, remnants, fragments, which are responsible for a wave of attacks on plantations and rural people, and are spreading a type of disease, an encephalitis that causes victims to hallucinate and maximize their levels of aggression. The last news was 3 months ago. I was in Siberia examining the frozen mammoth calf and couldn't make it back in time. But they said it was the same type of lizard, atypical and very large, that are found dead in the Costa Rican jungle. The remains, carbonized. The local population attributes these cases to an entity called the Hipótese, an ancient folk legend from the Taino culture where faceless night ghosts kidnap small children and people who venture out at night. Residents fear to cross his path and do not even mention his name. They say that whoever receives his visit does not escape alive, no one. I once received a photo of a newborn victim and a young man torn apart in the middle of the woods. I don't dare show the real images of what I saw to any of my colleagues. Hipóteses have been haunted by rural dwellers and even supposed carcasses have been stoned. But the aberrant forms are always destroyed. From the beginning, the government has done its best to ensure that no one finds out. But where could such creatures have come from? About 5 years ago, some American newspapers began to say that there was something strange on one of the islands off the coast. And for some reason, which journalists did not dare to objectively accuse, they suggested that Nublar Island was the birthplace of the aberrant forms. The president even invited a group of journalists on a special visit to the island and had them taken by helicopter to another place. Journalists didn't even notice the difference. The government's intention was to create a smokescreen and prevent there being any evidence that hindered tourists, nor any concrete evidence coming to the public's attention without the approval of the country's general staff. But despite this, the government was extremely concerned. They searched every inch to the borders that end in the northwest and southeast. They organized dozens of search groups. They did aerial reconnaissance. They flew over the jungle. They flew over islands far from the coast, especially on the west coast. They even searched the private islands, including Isla Nublar, and they didn't find anything there. Search missions have always failed and the government still remains frustrated, and of course is not the only one interested in the case. Last fall, the government granted permission to a group of Berkeley botanists to conduct an aerial reconnaissance of the jungle treetops in the Central Highlands. They had been working for a month when an issue arose about paying for the food on the plane or something. Anyway, a San Jose bureaucrat called Berkeley complaining, and Berkeley said he didn't know anything about the study group. In the meantime, the group fled the country. And last winter, 2 Swiss geologists showed up to collect samples on his lands along the coast. essayed as part of a study of volcanic activity in Central America. The islands off the coast are all volcanic and most with relatively active volcanoes. So it seemed like a reasonable request. But in the end, the geologists worked for an American genetics company called Bison and were looking for, well, large animals on the islands. Isla Nublar, for example, was a private island owned by an American company, International Genetics Technologies. The corporation became notorious for its unexplained stash of amber, exclusive funding of dinosaur excavations in cooler northern locations, and the leasing of Isla Nublar from the Costa Rican government, where it would serve as a spectacular vacation spot. In addition to being very complicated, several local residents had been hired for the work and access was restricted. In addition, the company became known for shipping 3 ultra-powerful crakes and supercomputers and 24 hood automated gene sequencers to the island, along with transporting heavy shipping containers where their contents remained completely classified. And bizarrely contacting Alan Grant through his attorney, Donald Jenner, asking for advice on caring for dinosaurs, particularly juveniles. The corporation also maintained an advanced and trained platoon of soldiers in its security division, which even offered its services to other nations. Eventually, an investigation into suspicious activity was filed by the Environmental Protection Agency. But soon the investigation came to an end, and shareholders filed appeals asking for its closure, claiming that the company so far had not carried out any type of illegal activity. This served as the stage for some rumors about the company to emerge. Rumors said that about 10 years ago, InGen managed to genetically create some dinosaurs and put them on this island in Costa Rica. But something went wrong. Many people were killed and the facilities were destroyed by the National Guard at the request of the company itself. Now nobody talks about it because of some legal determination. Agreements to keep the matter confidential or something similar. And the names rumored to have been involved in the event, including Dr. Alan Grant himself, deny to death any claim attributed to them. The company hired the eminent Stanford professor George Basilton, a biologist and essayist whose frequent television appearance had made him a popular authority on scientific subjects. Basilton claimed he had visited the island and categorically denied rumors that prehistoric animals had existed there. Your mocking phrase. Frankly, saber-toothed tigers contributed a great deal to reinforce the deno, but most likely it was all InGen propaganda. Interest in the company waned and InGen filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on October 5, 1989 in the San Francisco Supreme Court due to financial losses caused by the Isla Nublar incident. Major investors in Europe and Asia bore the losses, although the company's physical assets such as buildings and laboratory equipment were auctioned. They decided that the core technology they developed would never be sold. I purchased one of your computers last winter. It was intended to track InGen's research and production facilities by formatting the hard drive. Between annual reports and fat payrolls for consultants, I discovered that Isla Nublar would be used to develop a venture called the Jurassic Park Project. It would serve as a gigantic safari and resort, displaying prehistoric biological attractions brought back to life through the miracle of genetics. Visitors would appreciate them up close from some attractions similar to those found in African reserves. Some of them would be a jeep and boat ride through the paddocks, and a large metal structure where they displayed pterodactyls. They also ran a large laboratory for the production of genetically cloned dinosaurs, and that there were not one, but 2 research sites. A second research location not far from Isla Nublar. A blurry photo of a bespectacled Chinese man in a white coat in the middle of the jungle fooled the claim. He was standing next to a wooden sign that read, InGen Site B Research Complex. Where this possible facility was situated captivated me. Digging deeper into InGen's reports, I discovered this passage in a memo citing the name of a second island. Mr. Hammond wants to remind everyone that Jurassic Park's technology is not revealed, announced, or acknowledged. Mr. Hammond wants to remind all departments that the production complex will not be the subject of any press releases or discussions at any time. The production and manufacturing complex cannot be referenced to the production island location. Isla Sorna. Isla Sorna, a private island that makes up one of the 5 islands of the archipelago Las Cinco Muertes, entirely surrounded by a steep mountain range of volcanic rock. Only entrance to its interior is through the caves to the south. In the distant past, the island was occupied by a small Aztec population. A coffee plantation was cultivated in the mid-1860s by the Spanish. It was later leased to a German mining company in the 1920s, which abandoned the island before World War II. Since then, there are no official records of its use, until your name appears in the old InGen records. 2 days ago I got a call from a friend, Marty Gutierrez, saying that yet another creature had been found by fishermen in Juan Fernandez Bay in Costa Rica, a biological reserve not far from the Cinco Muertes archipelago. I am boarding the nearest flight. I can't miss this opportunity. If all my theories are correct, the existence of a lost world is real and not just science fiction out of a book by Jules Verne or Arthur Doyle. I will ask my friend, Jack Thorne, to finish as soon as possible to perfect the equipment for the expedition. 3 jeeps for field study and a technological trailer that will be used for sample analysis. A modern, compact, and dynamic mobile laboratory. I intend to prove my theory about how the evolution and extinction of species has shown itself on this planet, having in conditions all the necessary requirements to bring concrete evidence to the academic environment. But I feel that I am being spied upon and that I am not the first to catalogue this discovery. I have already mentored my 2 auxiliary students, Abby and Kelly, not to contact anyone who approaches them on the city streets asking for me.